Oregon has done it again with another stellar quarterback. Dillon Gabriel was a Heisman finalist last year. He left for the NFL. Dante Moore slides in and is playing great for the Ducks. Fresh off the double OT win over Penn State this past Saturday, the chatter surrounding Moore and his future is heating up because not only is he becoming one to look for a Heisman, but also the NFL is taking note of the play of Dante Moore. So what does that leave Oregon in the future if Dante Moore does leave for the draft, because despite being a redshirt sophomore, he is eligible for the NFL? From a recruiting standpoint, they have the 2026 four-star Bryson Beaver in the fold, but past that, a lot of question marks for Dan Lanning and company to figure out what they want to do at QB. Our recruiting experts, Brandon Huffman and Tom Loy, here with us this morning. And gentlemen, let's start with Dante Moore, who's shooting up the draft boards after playing so well this year and, dare I say, better than what Oregon might have expected from Moore, and now thinking, okay, he might not be around next year. We need to figure out this QB room and get things settled. Tom, I'll start with you. Is Oregon ready for the future at QB if Moore leaves for the NFL?
I feel great about Austin Novosad behind him. I mean, Dante Moore was absolutely the guy. I've been a huge fan of him. I've covered him for such a long time, going back to when he was a silent commit to Notre Dame. Obviously moves on, ends up at UCLA before transferring to Oregon. So I think he's more than ready for the next level. But behind him, Austin Novosad is a guy that we've always been excited about at 24/7 Sports. Now behind him, I think there's just a bunch of guys in the room, so I think he's the guy for the future. They landed 2026 quarterback Bryson Beaver, a guy Brandon Huffman will tell you more about, I'm sure. Guy he knows well, but beyond that, there's just not a ton of talent in the room. Their focus is going to be on landing a top guy in 2027.
Yeah, and I think when you look at what Beaver has done, the ascension that he made going from his junior season to the spring and the summer that he had where he became a top 100 guy, he was originally committed to Boise State. And Boise State has lost their share of quarterback commits as those guys have blossomed. And so he becomes that 2026 target for them that they end up getting when they lose out on a Ryder Lyons, who isn't completely out of the picture for 2027. He is committed to BYU, but will serve a one-year LDS mission. Bear Bachmeier is doing a good job as a true freshman at BYU. Maybe there's a quicker path to playing in Eugene, but I anticipate with Oregon, they'll go after a Keegan Croucher heavily. They'll go after a Trent Seaborn heavily in 2027. Even a Sione Cajo out of Tacoma. His older brother, Ale Cajo, played for Tosh Lapoy at Alabama. They are recruiting him out of the Pacific Northwest, so they're going to be fine. Whether it's losing Dante Moore 3 years ago to UCLA and then getting him a year later, the quarterback development at Oregon has been a major bright spot since Dan Lanning, a defensive guy, has been the head coach, thanks to Kenny Dillingham first and now Will Stein. I think Oregon's going to be in a great spot, whether it is bringing in a high school quarterback or going the portal route. Obviously, with Bo Nix and with Dillon Gabriel, they've gone that portal route and it succeeded. Dante Moore is a portal guy, but he was committed to Oregon. So I think they're going to be fine in the short term and in the long term.
Yeah, Dan certainly doing great work over there at Oregon on the trail, and them winning certainly helps all the time. Same situation you can look over for Ole Miss with them winning and getting the big win over LSU. So when you look at those two coaches in Lanning and Kiffin, how well are they doing on the trail right now moving forward, Brandon?
I think they're both in a great spot. Obviously, with Lane Kiffin, the questions are going to be, if Florida opens up, does he go there? Is he waiting for, potentially that Alabama job to open up sooner rather than later? And maybe he'll play the long game. Does Auburn come back and circle to him? Kiffin's name's always going to be tied to every major job, where I think Dan Lanning, with the grass isn't always greener, he's not showing that he's leaving. And the way they're recruiting shows that Oregon is here to stay. But, where Lane Kiffin years ago was calling himself Portal King, he is recruiting the high school ranks extremely well, whereas Dan Lanning is consistently having a top 2 or top 3 class in the Big Ten, where you've got Michigan and Ohio State, where you have USC rebounding recruiting-wise under Lane Kiffin. And now you're seeing Dan Lanning. They've had the National Recruiter of the Year in the last class with Chris Hampton. So they're recruiting so well. They are a national brand. And then you go win games like he did the other night. That only enhances it, whereas Lane Kiffin continues to show that consistency, which has shown that the Lane Kiffin of the early 2010s, was the old Lane. This is the new Lane, and he's cranking out NFL guys. He's succeeding well, and players love the character that Lane Kiffin is, because he's also a fantastic coach.
Yeah, and just to touch on Oregon and Dan Lanning, I mean, the guy has it rolling on the field and on the recruiting trail. I know we talked about life after Dante Moore, and Huffman brought up Trent Seaborn and Keegan Croucher, two top 247 quarterbacks that they're in a good spot for. Personally, for the Oregon fans out there, I think they should make a run at top 247 quarterback Israel Abrams out of Illinois and top 247 quarterback Colton Nussmeier from Texas. Those are the guys that Oregon could quickly become a big player. All they got to do is offer, because everybody is buying in all the stock on Dan Lanning. They know that he is completely locked in it. And when he says that Oregon is his dream job, his perfect job, and he's happy to be there, that's something that a lot of schools and coaches can't sell right now. So they have 2 5-star commits in safety Jet Washington and offensive lineman Emmanuel Iheanacho. I mean, this class is loaded with difference makers. Oregon is a well-oiled machine right now. They are completely buttoned up on the field, off the field, the recruiting department. So they are not going to be slowing down anytime soon. And then to quickly touch on, excuse me, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. I mean, things are moving at a rapid pace right now on the recruiting trail, on the field. Things could not be better. I actually really, really like the class right now. And they flipped so many guys. They just flipped top 247 cornerback Dorian Barney from Michigan. They flipped top 247 offensive lineman Emmanuel Tucker from LSU. They flipped top 247 running back Demarius Yates from Mississippi State. Like, this is what they're doing right now. Everybody's buying into Lane Kiffin, just like they're doing with Dan Lanning. So I think they're still missing that top tier 5-star elite talent difference maker right there at Ole Miss. But again, you keep winning, that's exactly what's going to happen over the next couple months.
I will say, as a University of Florida alum, I am hoping that Dan Lanning or Lane Kiffin can become our head coach in the future. That is what I want, because the state of Florida, when you look at Miami and Florida State, they're doing pretty good right now. And, of course, they play in Tallahassee this weekend. Tom, what does a recruiting weekend look like in Tally with those two in-state teams?
Now, obviously, the Virginia loss was a tough one for Florida State, but that's not going to stop the embarrassment of riches and top talent that are making their way to Tallahassee. I mean, the headliner, as long as he makes it, is elite running back Derek Cooper, who's committed to Texas. Now, he's expected. We're still trying to see if he's going to make it. That's the plan. But if he skips Texas at Florida to be in Tallahassee, talk about something that's extremely notable. But there are a bunch of guys that are committed elsewhere headed to town. You have 3-star tight end Corbin Fordham, who's committed to Ohio State. I have him on flip watch between now and Saturday when he gets to Tallahassee. You have a Florida commit in safety Caden Hall, who's headed to campus. We just talked about Oregon. Oregon has a safety commit, Xavier Larice from the Sunshine State. I got him on flip watch too. I mean, there's a lot of love for Florida State from Larice, and I know he's committed to the Ducks, but Eugene is very far away. So there's a couple other guys that are on flip watch, but there's also 2 notable underclassmen that are headed to campus. That is the #1 wide receiver in 2028, Bryson Wright, and the #1 cornerback in 2028, Amir Sears. Those guys are top of the board, top targets for Florida State. Do not be surprised if one day they end up at one of these programs, whether it's Florida State or Miami.
And let's not ignore the fact that a win by the road team can only enhance their own chances. We saw it with Oregon going to Penn State last week. We saw it with Alabama going down to Georgia. The road team will have some of their own eyeballs watching that game. And with Miami already having that win against Florida 2 weeks ago in Coral Gables or in Miami, to now have a chance to go on the road against Florida State and show that they are the premier team in the Sunshine State. We remember 2 years ago, Florida State was right there on the cusp of the playoffs, and then the bottom fell out a year ago to allow Miami to emerge with the #1 pick. A win by Mario Cristobal, who is as active and aggressive as any head coach in college football when it comes to recruiting. A win on Saturday for Miami gives them the sweep of the Big Three, and that only helps them with any of the 2026s that they're still trying to flip. And then with the 27s and the 28s, I think that Miami could come out of this in just as good a shape, if not better shape, with the win than Florida State even. And we saw it last week with Oregon. We saw it with Alabama. Mario Cristobal wants to continue that road dominance to make that national impression on recruits.
A lot to still take in. A big recruiting weekend coming up this Saturday. Tom Loy, Brandon Huffman on top of it every step of the way. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Looking forward to that, and tap into even more college football news over on the CBS Sports YouTube page to get more conversations like what we just had.